The Mayor Sadiq Khan has made no secret of the fact that he is worried about the impact Brexit may have on the capital's economy. And so today he took his message that London is open to the German capital of Berlin. His trip coincided with his party, Labour, saying that Brexit can still be stopped to change to its previous stance. So what is the Mayor's view? Our political correspondent Simon Harris was with him in Berlin.
Berlin's Brandenburg Gate and London's mayor kicked off day one of his latest Brexit-themed European tour. Sadiq Khan arrived in the German capital as his own party became mired in more confusion about its own Brexit policy. In London, senior figures were contradicting each other over whether Britain's exit from the EU can be stopped. City Hall described the mayor's trip as a trade mission, but with no Brexit deal agreed between Britain and the EU, it's hard to see just how much he can achieve.
I'm going to carry on banging the drum for London because what I don't want is these German businesses going to Paris or going to other parts of Europe.
Can Brexit be stopped?
We'll have to wait and see what happens in Parliament. I'm quite clear, though, that the deal the Prime Minister appears to be securing with the EU is a bad Brexit deal.
You still want to stop Brexit?
I think if the deal is this deal the Prime Minister takes to Parliament, MPs should vote against this deal.
The Germans at least gave the mayor the courtesy of access to senior political figures. This was a meeting with the finance minister, effectively Chancellor Merkel's deputy. But Olaf Scholz is as uncertain as anyone else about how Brexit will end.
Well, he can't read into a crystal ball.
In London's East End, Lance Foreman runs a smoked salmon factory. He's less than impressed to see the mayor on Brexit business abroad.
I don't think people in London voted Sadiq Khan in to go meddling in British politics in Europe. He should focus on what he was elected to do, and two of the biggest issues for London right now are crime and housing, and that's what he should be focusing on.
Sadiq Khan hosted a breakfast meeting for Berlin business leaders to promote his now familiar message that London is open. Knut Hechtfischer's company converts lampposts into charging points for electric cars.
We are not afraid, and we think there's a lot of opportunity, but the message that London is open and stays open, that is very important and very encouraging.
So you've heard the mayor's message?
Yeah, loud and clear.
But today's Berlin leg of this European trip wasn't confined to Brexit. The mayor found time to visit the memorial to Jewish victims of the Nazi Holocaust. Simon Harris, ITV News, Berlin.
Well, tonight the mayor has moved to Paris. Simon is there too. Is he taking the same message there, Simon?
Nina, the mayor arrived in Paris on a flight from Berlin a short time ago, and he's here for a series of events and meetings, the most significant of which tomorrow is a commemoration to mark the 3rd anniversary of the Bataclan massacre. It was on November the 13th, 2015, that 3 gunmen walked into the Bataclan Theatre here in Paris, where a rock concert was underway, and opened fire with automatic weapons, killing 90 members of the audience and staff inside the theatre. Tomorrow the mayor will be at the commemoration event with his opposite number from Paris, Anne Hidalgo, and the French Prime Minister. He'll also be meeting France's Minister for European Affairs, Nathalie Loiseau, and raising his concerns about post-Brexit security cooperation across over counter-terrorism.
Simon Harris, thank you very much. Thank you. In the last few hours, a government source has said a Brexit deal has been agreed on a technical level. It'll be examined at a cabinet meeting tomorrow. So until we know the details of the deal, and indeed until it gets through Parliament, the speculation about what could happen when we leave the EU goes on. Today in Paris, the London mayor warned a no-deal Brexit could leave security services in the UK struggling to tackle terrorism. Sadiq Khan was speaking after an event to remember the victims of the Bataclan attack in the French capital 3 years ago. From there, our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
Nick Alexander's name was one of the first to be read out, one of 90 victims of the Bataclan massacre. Today, London's mayor stood alongside French politicians outside the Bataclan Theatre for the 3rd anniversary commemoration. Mr. Alexander, who lived in Notting Hill, was a roadie for the rock band playing at the venue on the night the 3 terrorists walked in and opened fire on the audience. His sister Zoe was also in Paris today. The ceremony has become an annual pilgrimage.
Nick was a lovely, lively, funny, vibrant. He had a very big energy. You always knew when Nick was in the room. So it's important for us to celebrate that as well, to be here today.
Sadiq Khan spent several minutes talking to Mr Alexander's sister and his parents Sheila and Barry. The Mayor is here on the second leg of a Brexit-themed visit to 2 European capitals. And he chose today's anniversary to warn about the threat from terrorists and criminals if Britain leaves the EU without a deal. The Mayor believes catching criminals on the run in Europe could become much harder.
The Met Police will have to contact every country in Europe, ring them up, email them, speak to them, get through the bureaucracy, try and find that person. At the moment, it takes place in a second. Do we really want our police to be slower, inefficient, clunky? And if they are, I'll tell you what, it's music to the ears of criminals.
The Mayor called on ministers to negotiate a separate policing deal with European countries, however Brexit turns out. And his message was echoed by the minister responsible for the French government's input into the Brexit negotiations.
Whatever happens in the future, we want our future relation to be very strong and very solid with the United Kingdom to fight against terrorism, to work on security and defense. We are fully committed to this.
Later, Sadiq Khan stood shoulder to shoulder with the Mayor of Paris and let go of one of 130 balloons. Each one represented one of the victims of the multiple terrorist attacks in Paris 3 years ago today. Simon Harris, ITV News, Paris.
We've been talking to the country's most high-profile transgender couple about their wedding, their plans for children, and the discrimination they face, which can come from those who are also transgender. Hannah Graf is a captain in the army and her husband Jake, an actor. On Transgender Awareness Week, they invited our correspondent Simon Harris into their home in Surrey.
For Jake and Hannah Graf, married life means living in married quarters. Hannah's a captain in the army based at Sandhurst, the training school for officers at Camberley in Surrey. But married life in the military would once have been unthinkable for a transgender couple. Both knew from a very young age they weren't like other boys or girls.
I've known that I was in the wrong body, if you like, since I was about 2 or 3.
I knew I was different. I knew that I didn't quite fit into the stereotypes of what society was telling me I should be.
By the age of 16, I really needed to find a community somehow. So I found the lesbian community because I'd always been attracted to other women. So people said, well, you're a woman and you like women, therefore I thought I must be a lesbian.
When I was 16, I left home to join the army and I thought I really have to bury it now. But eventually life became too tough to live that double life and playing that act of that man that I wasn't.
Hannah decided to tell her military bosses she wanted to live openly as a woman. The reaction from squaddies and senior officers wasn't as you might imagine.
I was delighted to find that the British Army, my colleagues, my soldiers that I've commanded, as well as my friends and family, have all been hugely supportive, and it's been a really affirming, life-changing moment for me.
Hannah and Jake fell for each other on their first date. In March, they got married. She cut the cake with her army sword. But dating can be tricky for transgender men and women.
It can be quite scary to let a man know that you want something different, and there are a lot of men out there who will react very badly to that news, and some people have to hide it and some people come out and therefore never get a date in the first place.
When I came out as trans and I was, finally living as my authentic self, it became really hard to be dating women who obviously didn't understand that experience.
Hannah and Jake have become a poster couple for the transgender community. But many transgender people still find themselves the target of hatred and abuse.
For the trans community at the moment, across the world, I mean, it's pretty bad at the moment. No one would choose this life. It is a hard life. There is so much judgment. People don't understand us.
We don't want to invade spaces. We don't want to prey on anyone. We are just here just to get by in our lives. And if people understand that, then hopefully people realise then we're nothing to be feared. This is not a choice. This is something we were born as. It is who we are. It is unchangeable, and it just is.
For Hannah and Jake, marriage really is wedded bliss. Like many couples, they now want a family.
Certainly we're going to try the surrogacy route first, and again, if that doesn't work, we'll try adoption. We will do anything we can to have kids, much like any other couple out there will do.
I love the idea of becoming a mum, and I like the idea of having little babies and little toddlers and, doing the school run, everything that everyone else is very used to and expects in their lives. I just want the same as well, and I find it very exciting and a little bit scary.
Married life is a dream. Everything they tell you about in the books, it's all true.
It's a lot like it was before. We just see each other more often.
First time.
Jake is an actor and film director. He recently appeared in Butterfly, ITV's groundbreaking drama about a transgender schoolgirl. He also has a part in a new Keira Knightley film, Colette. Hannah is also swapping roles. Her career in the military is coming to an end. After spending half of her life in uniform, the highest-ranking transgender officer in the British Army has decided to become a civilian. For many transgender people, the past can be very painful. This couple at least have discovered the future is a different place altogether.
Well, Hannah and Jake are with Simon Harris in our digital studio, where they'll be taking your questions on Facebook. Simon.
Charlene, we heard a little there about Jake and Hannah's journey, but they've got a lot more to share about their experiences, their hopes for the future, and the wider issues affecting the transgender community. Did you know that there's a gender identity clinic for children in London? It's run by the NHS. It's the only one in the UK. 8 years ago, just 25 youngsters were referred to the clinic. Last year, that was almost 200 youngsters. Meanwhile, the number of transgender hate crimes reported to the police in London has doubled in the last 4 years. This is Transgender Awareness Week, and fewer couples have done more to raise awareness than Jake and Hannah. They've got plenty to share and say about their experiences, but we want to hear from you as well. So feel free to join the conversation on the ITV News London Facebook page. We'll be here at 6:30.
Oh, I can't wait for that, Simon. Thanks very much. Good evening. Well, it's been quite a day over at Westminster, with resignations and rebellions since first thing this morning. Esher and Walton MP Dominic Raab was the first to resign today, saying he could no longer be Brexit Secretary, a job he's only had for 4 months because he couldn't support the deal put forward by Theresa May. Well, that then led to a series of MPs putting in letters of no confidence in the PM. But tonight she said she has no intention of standing down. Well, we'll hear the latest from her in just a moment. But first, our political correspondent Simon Harris has the latest from Westminster.
He's the man who triggered the Prime Minister's biggest crisis so far. This morning, Dominic Raab quit as the Secretary of State for exiting the EU. It was a move which set the ball rolling for a leadership challenge.
Well, I felt the proposed deal with the EU suffered two fatal flaws. The first one is the rather predatory terms being proposed by the EU, which I feel would threaten the integrity of the United Kingdom.
Mr Raab also opposes the so-called backstop to avoid a border in Northern Ireland. He's been MP for Esher and Walton since 2010 and joined the Cabinet in July after David Davis resigned in protest at Mrs May's Chequers proposal. That put him in charge of Britain's negotiations with the EU, with regular trips to Brussels for talks with Michel Barnier. Within hours of Mr Raab's resignation, the Prime Minister was trying to defend her deal to MPs. She got the cruelest of responses.
It is a draft treaty that means that we will leave the EU in a smooth and orderly way on the 29th of March 2019.
The withdrawal agreement and the outline political declaration represent a huge and damaging failure.
Jeremy Corbyn's criticism was scathing, but Mrs May also faced fierce attacks from her own side.
It is therefore mathematically impossible to get this deal through the House of Commons. The stark reality, Prime Minister, is that it was dead on arrival at St Tommy's before you stood up.
Others were clinging to the hope of a second referendum.
The Prime Minister said this is in the national interest. So why not allow people in our nation to have their say now?
This whole House recognises the dedication and hard work she has put into this 585-page agreement. However, when politics is broken, one can only put the question back to the British people.
This morning, the speculation at Westminster was about cabinet ministers. Tonight, it's the Prime Minister's position which looks rocky. Simon Harris, ITV News, Westminster.
And as Paul made clear, it seems that Theresa May faces an uphill struggle to convince her critics in the Cabinet and her own parliamentary party that her Brexit deal is the right one. So instead, she's taking her argument to the people in a flurry of interviews in print, on radio and today on television. Simon Harris has been to Gloucester to see how that's going at the grassroots level.
In Gloucester's Victorian Market, there was only one thing on most people's minds: early Christmas shopping. But among the seasonal stalls, they were happy to trade their views about Theresa May and her Brexit deal.
She took the job on and then everybody sort of like left it to her to sort out the mess. I think people should give her a bit of a chance.
Maybe she should go and let someone else have a go.
I want to come out of the common market. We've got to have some sort of deal, but what it will be, I don't know. I hope it's something that's going to help us.
We have to have a deal or I think we're going to be in some crisis. So a deal is better than no deal in my eyes.
Andy Lewis is the president of the local Conservative Association. He spent the weekend testing the mood of voters.
I work in a very well-known supermarket and I sit in the canteen and we chat and whatever, and they tell me their foresights, and especially the ladies, and they are so supportive. And then I said, well, I'll pass that message on, and that's what I do. I pass it on to my MP.
This is a city where almost 6 out of 10 voters chose to leave the EU. However, their Conservative MP backed Remain in the referendum campaign.
I think what I've really been hearing this weekend actually is a huge amount of respect for the Prime Minister, recognition what an incredibly difficult task it is, and a hope and a desire that we can all get behind her and vote this deal through so that everyone can get on with their lives and we don't have to talk about Brexit forever after.
Is really nobody saying to you it's a rubbish deal?
Oh no, sure.
Tonight, Gloucester held its annual Christmas lantern parade. 2.5 years after the Brexit vote, no one here can be sure where it'll end. Simon Harris, ITV News, Gloucester.